unexpected in JonBenét's death, her brother. And in a sit-down interview with Dr. Phil, Burke Ramsey...
December 26, 1996, Boulder, Colorado. A young girl named JonBenét Ramsey, just 6 years old, was found brutally murdered in the basement of her family's home. The case would soon ignite a media firestorm unlike any other, one that would rage for decades, dragging her family, and especially her 9-year-old brother Burke, into a vortex of suspicion, scrutiny, and silence. It began like any other holiday morning. But for the Ramsey family, December 26th would turn into an unimaginable nightmare. That morning, John and Patsy Ramsey made a frantic call to police. Their daughter, JonBenét, was missing. In her place was a strange 2.5-page ransom note demanding $118,000, an oddly specific amount. But as the police conducted a chaotic and disorganized search of the home, it was John Ramsey, not law enforcement, who discovered his daughter's body. Nearly 8 hours after the initial 911 call, he found JonBenét's small, lifeless form in a little-used basement room known as the wine cellar. The sight was haunting. Her hands were tied above her head with white nylon cord, her mouth covered with duct tape, and a garrote, made from one of Patsy's paintbrushes, tightly wound around her neck. A white blanket was gently draped over her body, as though someone had tucked her in after death. The trauma was severe. JonBenét had been struck violently on the head, causing a skull fracture nearly 8 inches long. But chillingly, that was not what killed her. The cause of death was determined to be asphyxiation by strangulation, a detail that suggested her killer had intent, precision, and possibly time to stage the scene. Yet, rather than springing into forensic lockdown, the Boulder Police Department made a series of critical missteps. In the earliest hours of the case, when preservation of evidence is most vital, officers allowed friends, neighbors, and even clergy to move freely throughout the home. The crime scene was hopelessly contaminated. Furniture was moved, rooms were cleaned, evidence was touched, displaced, or completely overlooked. Even worse, John Ramsey carried JonBenét's body from the basement, up the stairs, and laid her down near the Christmas tree, further disturbing the scene. At the time, police made no effort to stop him, nor did they isolate family members for separate interviews. That failure would later be regarded as one of the most disastrous oversights in American criminal investigative history. From the very beginning, the case was plagued by suspicion, not only toward the family but toward the very authorities tasked with solving it. These early investigative errors would create a ripple effect that echoed for decades. With compromised evidence, unreliable testimonies, and mounting media scrutiny, the case transformed from a local tragedy into a national enigma. The stage was no longer set for justice, it was set for speculation. From the very beginning, the public's curiosity turned into obsession. The peculiar details of the case, the note, the pristine condition of the house, and the lack of forced entry, suggested to many that the crime had been staged, and suspicion quickly turned inward, toward the Ramsey family. But among all the whispers and headlines, one name echoed louder than the rest: Burke Ramsey, JonBenét's older brother. Just 9 years old at the time of the murder, Burke, a shy and soft-spoken boy, became the unlikeliest yet most persistent figure at the center of the storm. It started subtly. Journalists pointed out that Burke had been in the house the night JonBenét died, yet there were few mentions of what he had seen or heard. He wasn't interviewed extensively until weeks after the murder, an unusual delay that raised eyebrows. Soon, theories began to surface suggesting that perhaps he had awoken during the night. Perhaps there had been an accident, a sibling spat that turned deadly. Perhaps JonBenét stole a piece of fruit, pineapple, famously found in the kitchen with both children's fingerprints, and Burke lashed out. What followed was a frenzy of speculation. Tabloids ran with it. Headlines hinted at the brother theory. Armchair detectives on online forums scrutinized every moment of Burke's childhood, every home video, every family photograph, searching for signs of jealousy, rage, or guilt. They analyzed his handwriting, his body language, even his eye contact in public appearances. Despite there being no forensic evidence linking him to the crime, no DNA, no fingerprints on the murder weapon, no physical injuries, Burke was unofficially tried in the court of public opinion. Internet sleuths crafted elaborate timelines, complete with diagrams, fake testimonies, and psychological breakdowns. They clung to the pineapple bowl, the flashlight, the basement. Yet through it all, Burke remained silent. For 20 years, he stayed out of the spotlight, never addressing the allegations. To many, that silence spoke volumes, confirmation, not hesitation. To others, it was the act of a child-turned man trying to reclaim his life after being thrust into a nightmare not of his own making. His silence became a blank canvas onto which America projected its darkest assumptions. Without solid proof, speculation filled the vacuum. And in that vacuum, Burke Ramsey became a modern-day mystery, the boy in the shadows of a crime that stole a nation's innocence. For 20 years, Burke Ramsey remained almost entirely silent. That changed in 2016. In a rare and widely anticipated 3-part interview with Dr. Phil, Burke finally broke his silence. The episodes captivated millions and reignited debate across the country. Burke faced the camera, composed but clearly anxious, and addressed the world's questions directly. "I know people think I did it, that I killed her," he said. "But I didn't. I know I didn't." His words were calm, perhaps too calm, some argued. Viewers debated his expressions, his awkward smile, his occasional laughter. But as Dr. Phil later clarified, that's not abnormal behavior. That's socially anxious behavior. Nothing in this interview, medically or psychologically, suggests guilt. Just before Burke's interview aired, CBS had released a highly controversial documentary. A panel of former FBI agents, forensic experts, and behavioral analysts simulated the crime scene. Their conclusion? That Burke may have struck JonBenét in a fit of childish anger, possibly with a flashlight, and that the parents staged the scene to cover it up. They pointed to a bowl of pineapple found in the kitchen, partially eaten and containing both JonBenét's and Burke's fingerprints. The flashlight theorized to have been used in the injury matched her skull trauma. And with no signs of forced entry and the ransom note seemingly written inside the house, the documentary cast its suspicions heavily on the Ramseys. Burke didn't take the CBS documentary lightly, and how could he? The 2016 special, The Case of JonBenét Ramsey, broadcast to millions, presented a dramatized recreation suggesting that Burke, then only a child, may have been responsible for his sister's death. Without direct evidence, it leaned on circumstantial clues: a bowl of pineapple, a flashlight, and behavioral simulations. To many viewers, it crossed the line from theory to accusation. In response, Burke took decisive legal action. He filed a defamation lawsuit for $750 million against CBS and the production team, alleging that the program had irreparably damaged his reputation, subjected him to emotional trauma, and perpetuated a false narrative that haunted him into adulthood. The legal documents argued that CBS had perpetuated a fraud on the public by presenting speculation as fact. Burke's team emphasized that the documentary ignored key evidence, such as the absence of any DNA tying him to the crime scene, and selectively edited interviews to fit a pre-written theory. Public opinion split. Some applauded Burke for standing up to what they viewed as exploitative media. Others argued the lawsuit was an attempt to silence free speech and journalistic inquiry. But the real issue at hand was deeper. Can a network publicly accuse someone, especially a minor at the time of murder, without solid proof and hide behind the label of documentary? In 2019, the case was quietly settled out of court, with both parties agreeing to undisclosed terms. Though CBS never issued a formal retraction, the settlement was viewed by many legal analysts as a tacit acknowledgement that the network may have overstepped. Legally, Burke Ramsey has never been indicted, arrested, or even officially named a suspect. Investigative authorities, from the Boulder Police Department to the District Attorney's Office, have consistently refrained from implicating him. And most critically, DNA evidence recovered from JonBenét's clothing in 2008 excluded Burke entirely, pointing instead to an unidentified male. Despite this, the specter of public suspicion has never fully faded. In many ways, the CBS lawsuit was Burke's first and only aggressive move to reclaim his identity, not as a suspect, but as a person who has lived in the shadow of an accusation he has always denied. In 2008, a major breakthrough emerged. DNA found on JonBenét's clothing was tested using advanced techniques. The results? It belonged to an unidentified male, not Burke, not John, not Patsy. In 2008, District Attorney Mary Lacey took an unprecedented step in the case. She formally exonerated the entire Ramsey family, including Burke. Her statement was clear and definitive. After a review of the advanced DNA testing results, conducted using technology that didn't exist at the time of the original investigation, Lacey concluded that an unknown male DNA profile found on JonBenét's clothing did not match John, Patsy, or Burke. It was the closest thing to an official clearing of names that the family had received in over a decade. More than that, Lacey issued a public apology to the Ramseys. She acknowledged the devastating toll the investigation and public scrutiny had taken on the family, particularly on Burke, who had been only a child during the time of the tragedy. For a brief moment, it seemed like the cloud of suspicion might finally lift, but it didn't. Despite the exoneration, public suspicion didn't fade. It evolved. Where newspapers and television once held sway, now social media took the reins. Reddit threads dissected old police reports. YouTube videos proposed elaborate theories. Podcasts re-examined every frame of Burke's 2016 Dr. Phil interview, looking for clues in his body language or his smile. In this new digital era, everyone became a detective, and Burke, once again, became the prime suspect in the court of public opinion. He retreated once more into silence and seclusion, choosing privacy over protest. According to multiple verified sources, Burke moved to Michigan, started a career in the tech industry, and lived quietly, far from cameras, microphones, and accusations. He no longer granted interviews. He didn't speak publicly about the case. He became a ghost in the story he never asked to be part of. And yet, the case lingered. The whispers continued. Then, in 2022, a new chapter began, not through media speculation or courtroom drama, but through science. With the advent of next-generation forensic technology and genetic genealogy, long cold cases were being reopened across the country. It was a glimmer of hope that truth, real, verifiable truth, might finally emerge in a case that had been defined for too long by uncertainty, errors, and noise. The Ramsey family submitted formal requests to have the case reopened using cutting-edge DNA genealogy, technology that had solved cold cases like the Golden State Killer. Investigators, in partnership with the FBI and private labs, digitized the entire case file, over 2,100 leads, more than 1,000 interviews, and hundreds of forensic samples. In 2025, the Boulder Police Department established an interagency task force to reassess everything, every overlooked footprint, every fragment of DNA, every possibility. With digital genealogy, investigators are no longer limited to direct DNA matches. Instead, they can trace the family trees of unknown contributors, zeroing in on potential suspects even without a name. The Ramsey family hopes that this new scientific approach will finally uncover the truth, and that JonBenét will finally have justice. Images of news reports, social media threads, YouTube thumbnails. What happens when media speculation outpaces evidence? When a child becomes the face of suspicion? Burke Ramsey's story is as much about injustice as it is about mystery. For 2 decades, he lived under a storm of judgment, not from a court of law, but from public opinion. From television pundits to Reddit threads, from YouTube channels to podcasts, the scrutiny never stopped. Some documentaries treated theories as fact. Some talk shows dissected his childhood behavior. And through it all, Burke remained a silent figure, haunted perhaps, but never heard. Director Joe Berlinger's 2024 documentary Cold Case, Who Killed JonBenét?, pushed back against the CBS narrative. He emphasized the lack of investigative integrity in the early days and criticized how the media had turned a child into a scapegoat without evidence. Today, Burke lives a quiet life in Michigan, far from the flashing cameras of his youth. He works in the tech industry, shuns interviews, and rarely appears in public. Those close to him describe him as private, cautious, and focused on rebuilding a life that the media once dismantled. His half-brother, John Andrew Ramsey, has consistently defended him, calling out the damage done by irresponsible speculation. He was a child, John Andrew told the press, and he's been tried in the court of public opinion for something he didn't do. Indeed, no legal authority has ever assigned blame to Burke, and yet he remains a symbol of how media can create villains out of shadows, and how silence can be mistaken for guilt. As of mid-2025, the JonBenét Ramsey case remains officially unsolved, but far from forgotten. With modern DNA tools, cooperative agencies, and a national spotlight reignited, hope has returned. Investigators believe that new technology could identify the man behind the DNA found in 2008. The next year could finally yield answers. But as we wait, the story of Burke Ramsey remains a sobering reminder. A reminder that justice is not just about finding the perpetrator. It's also about protecting the innocent from the machinery of blame. JonBenét deserves justice, and Burke, after all these years, deserves peace. In a world where public opinion can move faster than the facts, we must be vigilant about what we believe, what we share, and how we judge. Because sometimes, the real tragedy lies not only in what was lost, but in what we chose to believe along the way. If you found this story meaningful, please like this video to show your support, share it to promote truth over speculation, and subscribe for more deeply researched stories. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. We value respectful, evidence-based dialogue.